everyone. Today I am here before you presenting the situational approach of teaching English language. And the different points that I am going to discuss are background of oral or situational approach, its meaning, characteristics, the role of a learner, the role of a teacher, and different activities followed in this approach, and in the end, its advantages and disadvantages. Let's start with the background. The situational language learning is also called oral approach. And the oral approach or situational language learning was developed from the 1930s to the 1960s by Harold Palmer, A.S. Hornsby, Michael West, and other British applied linguists. They were familiar with the direct method of teaching English language as well as other works of 19th century applied linguists. It was a direct reaction to the direct method of teaching English language. And in contrast to the direct method, oral approach was based on the scientific research. One of the primary desires of the developers of this approach was to have a systematic way of teaching English language. During his stay in Japan, Harold Palmer tried to teach grammar through oral approach. Now, what is situational language teaching? In the words of Michael Holiday, he says, when we acquire our primary language, we do so by learning how to behave in situations, not by learning rules about what to say. The same rules are also applied in the situational language learning. Neither translation nor mechanical drills can help if they are not connected to the practical life. And drilling words and structures or making a maximum of sentences out of substitution tables would inevitably lead to the unreality, boredom, and remoteness of the language process. But in situational approach, it is ensured that the language that is being taught is realistic. And all the words and sentences must grow out of some real situations or imagined real situations. Thus, the meaning of words are tied up with the situations in which they are used. For example, the learners know the meaning of the word blackboard, not because they have looked it up in the dictionary, but because they have learned the word in situations by hearing the commands of the teacher in the classroom, such as look at the blackboard, clean the blackboard, write on the blackboard. So these examples stresses the association between the word blackboard and the action of looking at it, cleaning it, or writing on it. Oral presentation, it precedes before writing and reading in this approach. Grammar and vocabulary are introduced inductively in situations. Explanations and translations are discouraged. Next point, even if the classroom environment is limited, the teacher's inventiveness should be put into practice and situation can be picked up from outside the classroom. Since the purpose of teaching a foreign language is to enable the learners to use it, then it must be heard, spoken, read, and written in suitable, realistic situations. The situational environment should be presented in such a way that even the slowest learner gets involved in what the teacher or other learners do and say in the classroom. And the idea of making the learners cooperate with one another underlines the social touch of this approach. Learners are always eager to take part in make-believe situations, especially when they assume roles and enact a situation before the rest of the class. Next is characteristics. Oral approach stresses the following points. First one is vocabulary. Vocabulary is seen as a way for developing reading skills in this approach. The oral approach stipulates a list of 2,000 words which are essential for reading comprehension. And the grammar. In terms of grammar, it is not the same as the grammar translation method, which stresses universal grammar. Rather, in oral approach, it is the patterns of the sentences that matters, such as subject, verb, and object. And students learn the structures in order to use and understand the language. Next point is curriculum. There are three main elements to the curriculum development in oral approach. These are selection, gradation, and presentation. Selection is the choosing of the content. Gradation is the process of organizing the curriculum, and presentation is the instructional component. And another major aspect of curriculum was the development of the PPP instructional model. Now, what is the PPP instructional model? PPP stands for presentation, practice, and perform. Presentation is the teacher sharing information with students, and practice is the students having time to demonstrate their understanding without fear of failure. Perform is the student sharing their knowledge as a form of assessment. Next point. Language teaching begins with the spoken language material and is taught orally before it is presented in written form. And the target language is the language of the classroom. English language is the language of the classroom. And new language points are introduced and practiced situationally. Next point, items of grammar are graded following the principle that simple form should be taught before complex ones. And reading and writing are introduced once a sufficient grammatical and lexical basis is established. Lexical means related to the words or vocabulary. So these were the characteristics. Next is the learner's role. What is the learner's role in situational approach? Initially, the learner has to listen and repeat what teacher is saying. And he has to respond to the questions asked by the teacher. The learner has to situationalize the structure and the meaning. And the class is teacher-centered. However, student has to do the chorus repetitions, dictations, drills, oral-based reading and writing exercises, peer practices, and group works, etc. Next is the teacher's role. This method leads to threefold activity for a teacher. First one is setting the stage for a new structure. Second, presenting the model structure. And finally, drilling and correction. The teacher creates situations through gestures, showing actual objects, using models, charts, and pictures, and by using blackboard, etc. The lessons are highly teacher-centered, and the teacher is extremely active with timing, reviewing, testing, etc. The ultimate goal of teaching learning is to make the students able to use the language in known structured real life settings. Next is creating verbal situations in the classroom. What is verbal situations? It is a situation created only verbally by the teacher. And sometimes in the classroom, it is not possible for the teacher to create situations through pictures, models, and charts, etc. And in these circumstances, the teacher needs to create the verbal situations. For example, Sunil goes to Delhi on every Monday. In second sentence, Sunil went to Delhi yesterday. Third sentence, Sunil is going to Delhi today. And in fourth, Sunil will go to Delhi tomorrow. So by creating above situations verbally, the teacher can teach the students about different tenses as well as the meaning of abstract nouns such as truth, honesty, beauty, etc. Now the activities. Some activities to be followed by the teacher in the classroom. Number one is listening practice. Listening practice in which the teacher obtains his students' attention and repeats examples of the patterns or words in isolation clearly several times, probably saying it slowly at least once. Number second, choral imitation, in which students together or in large groups repeat what the teacher has said. Number three, individual invitation. Individual invitation in which the teacher asks individual students to repeat the model he has given in order to check their pronunciation. Number four, isolation. Isolation in which the teacher isolates sounds of words or groups of words which causes trouble and then goes through other techniques of problem solving. Number five, substitution drilling. Substitution drilling in which the teacher uses the keywords, words, pictures, numbers, names, etc. to get individual students to mix the examples of the new patterns. Question answer drilling. Question answer drilling in which the teacher gets one student to ask questions and another to answer until most students in the class have practiced asking and answering the new question form. So these are some of the activities followed by the teacher in the classroom. Next is advantages of situational approach. Activity-based learning arouses the interest of the students in the classroom, and extensive teaching learning material aids are used to make the classroom ambience lively. Classroom ambience means the classroom atmosphere lively. So the teaching learning material aids makes the classroom atmosphere lively. A suitable method for the first contact with the new language. If you want to teach a new language, you're going to have a first contact with the new language, and this method is most suitable. And it is a good method if the teacher wants to teach vocabulary and pronunciation at the same time. Next point. This method does not require lots of resources to be carried out. The teacher can teach only with the limited resources. Children use the language in natural way. They learn the language in a natural way. And this method is taught by much trained teachers. Teacher explains things according to the age and the interest of the children in this situational approach. So these were the advantages. Disadvantages. In this method, oral skills are more important than written skills. So the children can be less prepared in the rest of the skills. Number next, this method required simply to listen and repeat what teacher says and to respond questions and commands given by the teacher. This method does not account for the fundamental characteristics of language learning, namely the creativity and uniqueness of individual sentences. The learner has no control over the content of the learning, and he is required simply to listen and repeat what the teacher says and to respond to the questions and commands. So these were some of the disadvantages of this approach. So in conclusion, we can say that many of the structural elements of this approach were called into question in the 1960s and causing modifications that led to the communicative language teaching. However, its emphasis on oral practice, grammar, and sentence patterns still finds widespread support among language teachers and remains popular in countries where foreign language syllabus is still heavily based on grammar. In short, we can say that the oral approach also paved the way for even more innovation in the language teaching. So that's all for today. Next, we will discuss in our next session. Till then, thank you very much. Thanks for watching.